Hi, it's Katrina. Did ancient Egyptians visit the Grand Canyon? Is the moon magnetic? Is there really a gateway to hell in Mexico? Today, we'll delve into these topics and many more, so hold on to your hats, ladies and gentlemen, and let's get into it. Ancient Egyptians in the Grand Canyon. According to a story that was published in the Arizona Gazette in 1909, a man named G.E. Kincaid discovered a cave entrance in the Grand Canyon that contained evidence of ancient Egyptian influence. This may sound like a ridiculous claim given the vast distance between the US and Africa, but on April 9, 1909, Kincaid claimed to find the most important archaeological find in North America. Kincaid embarked on a voyage down the Colorado River in a wooden skiff, originally looking for gold. He explored the main canyon as well as secondary tributaries like the Little Colorado Canyon. However, nothing really caught his eye until he reached Marble Canyon, located near the confluence of the Colorado River and the Little Colorado River. In this area, Kincaid noticed stains in the rock formation, roughly 2,000 feet above the riverbed. Fascinated by this observation, he scaled up the rock wall to get a closer look, but it wasn't an easy task. Along with him, he hauled up his glass plates and camera. When he finally reached his destination, to his surprise, he found a cave entrance. The cave was called an underground citadel. It was reportedly vast and contained hundreds of chambers that were said to be filled with mummies and other impressive Egyptian artifacts. When Kincaid described the discovery to the Arizona Gazette, he claimed to find a Buddha-like idol sitting in the typical cross-legged position, holding a flower in each hand, carved from the chamber walls themselves. He also said that he found gold and copper vases, burial chambers that were filled with sarcophagi, and entire granaries loaded with seed. Unable to carry all of these artifacts himself, Kincaid left the cave and traveled to Yuma, Arizona, where he detailed his discovery to the newspaper. Shortly thereafter, rumors spread of the Smithsonian catching wind of these mysterious relics, dispatching a team of some 30 scientists to document and explore this monumental find. It's important to note that there is little to no evidence that this happened, but some people believe the story did happen indeed. It was simply covered up. Even though there is evidence that Kincaid was employed as a professor of anthropology by the Institute and had worked under Professor S.A. Jordan for 30 years, Smithsonian officials denied ever being involved with Kincaid when questioned later on. But the alleged site of this cave, as well as its surroundings in Marble Canyon, have since been acquired by the American government, strictly declaring the area off-limits to tourists and visitors. It's easy to write something like this off as a hoax, but there's more to the story. Native Americans like the Hopi, inhabiting places in northeastern Arizona, describe in their legends almost exactly what was described by G.E. Kincaid. They tell stories of pre-Columbian visits from advanced civilizations. And although the Hopi didn't mummify their dead, numerous mummies have been excavated in North America. The Hopi speak of civilizations like the Egyptians and other cultures and claim that they had a great influence on their own culture. This comes from obscure sites on the internet, so it's hard to say for sure. While this doesn't definitively prove that the Egyptians visited the Grand Canyon in the ancient past, it does add some credibility to the story. And if the Egyptians did make it to North America, it would change history as we know it. China's flush toilet. Chinese archaeologists claim to have discovered the world's oldest flushing toilet, a 2,400-year-old manual toilet box and pipe found at an archaeological site in Xi'an, China. The toilet was unearthed in the ruins of a palace in Zhuoyang. It's believed to date back to the Warring States period of 424 BC and the Qin dynasty, which lasted from 221 BC to 206 BC. Researchers dubbed it a luxury toilet, believing it was used by high-ranking officials during that time. The flushing toilet is considered the first and only one to ever be unearthed in China, surprising the excavation team. Liu Rui, a researcher at the Institute of Archaeology at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, stated that it was concrete proof of the ancient Chinese emphasis on sanitation. The toilet was likely reserved for figures like Qin Shi Gong or his father. Servants would pour water into the bowl after each use. Archaeologists are currently examining soil samples from the toilet to determine the diet of people during that time. This discovery challenges the previous belief that the first manual flush toilet was invented in the 16th century by John Harrington for Queen Elizabeth I. This ancient Chinese toilet predates it by centuries. And now for number 12. But first, it's shout-out time! I want to give a big thank you to Vexstar and Aloe All About Aloe for supporting this channel. We wouldn't be here without you. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos about incredible new discoveries. We'd love to have you. Cinea Island. In March 2023, archaeologists in the United Arab Emirates discovered the most ancient pearling town in the Persian Gulf, located on Cinea Island. Artifacts excavated from this town in al-Quwain date back to the late 6th century, during the region's pre-Islamic period. This place was once home to thousands of people and structures. Older pearling towns are mentioned in historical texts, but this recent find represents the first time researchers found one of these towns from this particular ancient era throughout the nations of the Persian Gulf. Cinea Island, whose name translates to flashing lights in English due to the sweltering sun above, is also home to other monumental discoveries, including a 1,400-year-old Christian monastery. The pearling town is situated directly south of the monastery, atop one of the island's curling fingers, stretching some 30 acres. Homes made of lime mortar and beach rock were discovered in the town, some of which were cramped, while others were more spacious and included what would have been luxurious courtyards. This suggests that there was some type of social hierarchy, with the lower class living well below the means of the upper class. According to Timothy Power, a professor of archaeology from the United Arab Emirates University, the site bears signs of habitation year-round, which stood out since other pearling operations seem to run seasonally within the region. In some of the homes, diving weights and loose pearls were discovered. The weights would have allowed free divers to quickly drop to the seabed while they relied on holding their breath, as no oxygen tanks were available back then. The town is ancient, predating the rise of Islam throughout the Arabian Peninsula, which would likely make its residents early Christians. Those exploring the site also found a dump site close by, filled to the brim with the debris of discarded oyster shells. These shells aren't only found in the dump site, though. They litter the entire area. It's been said that those walking across the island can feel the crunch of them beneath their feet as they break like porcelain. Timothy Power claims that for every 10,000 oyster shells, you'll typically only find one pearl. You'll have to locate, then discard thousands of shells just to find one measly pearl. After World War I, the rise of artificial pearls completely took over the industry. It made more sense given the colossal waste associated with organic pearling. These days, if you're buying pearls, they're likely cultured, not wild. Most natural pearls that are in circulation right now are antiques, likely extracted from the sea by one of these ancient pearling towns. Magnetic lunar rocks. In a groundbreaking discovery from early 2024, an international research team led by Dr. Ottaviano Rusch from the University of Münster has identified anomalous meter-sized rocks on the lunar surface. The massive rocks are covered in sharp-edged and electrostatically charged dust. The findings, published in the Journal of Geophysical Research, reveal that these rocks exhibit unique reflective properties, differing from previously known lunar rocks. Scientists were astonished by the discovery, emphasizing its significance in understanding lunar crust formation processes. This study, conducted using images captured by NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter spacecraft, focused on the Reiner Gamma region, known for magnetic anomalies on the moon's surface. The research delves into the magnetic properties of rocks, a previously unexplored aspect, shedding light on the moon's history and its magnetic core. Dr. Rusch explains that the team employed artificial intelligence to sift through 1 million images, identifying around 130,000 intriguing rocks. A distinctive boulder with dark areas caught their attention due to its unique light-scattering properties, attributed to the particular dust structure covering it. This structure defies typical lunar dust behavior, raising questions about its density and grain size. The scientists acknowledge being in the early stages of understanding the dust and its interactions with rocks. Ongoing investigations aim to explore processes such as electrostatic charging, dust lifting, and the impact of solar wind on local magnetic fields. The study opens new avenues for comprehending lunar dust movement. This is crucial for planning human settlements on the moon, considering past challenges faced by Apollo astronauts, including habitat contamination and equipment issues caused by lunar dust. It seems like a small thing, but dust is a big deal. NASA plans to send a rover to the Reiner Gamma region in the future, seeking similar boulders with special dust properties, marking a significant step toward advancing lunar exploration. The world's oldest skin fossil. In a groundbreaking discovery made in 2018, researchers at Toronto University have identified a fossilized skin fragment that's at least 21 million years older than any that have previously been found. This 3D fragment belongs to a Paleozoic reptile. It's the oldest preserved example of an epidermis, the outermost layer of skin in terrestrial reptiles, birds, and mammals. Despite the rarity of fossilized skin and soft tissue, the cave's unique conditions in Oklahoma, known as Richard's Spur, preserve this ancient skin with a pebbled surface, resembling crocodile skin. The fossil, which is estimated to be 286 to 289 million years old, based on stalagmite rings, predates dinosaurs by nearly 50 million years. Richard's Spur has previously yielded well-preserved fossils from the Paleozoic era, protected by tar and petroleum in the cave. The newly discovered skin, smaller than a fingerprint, exhibits hinged regions between epidermal scales, resembling modern-day snakes and lizards. While the researchers can't confirm the species due to the lack of skeletal remains, they propose that it might be from a small reptile called Captorhinus agutai. Microscopic examinations revealed epidermal tissues, characteristics of amniotes, a group including reptiles, birds, and mammals that evolved during the Carboniferous period. The unexpected resemblance between ancient and present-day reptile skin emphasizes the crucial role that these structures played in terrestrial vertebrate survival. The epidermis served as a vital barrier between internal body processes and the harsh external environment. This surprising find challenges expectations, shedding light on the evolution of skin structures in early amniotes and their significance in later developments such as bird feathers and hair cells. The fossil was collected by paleontology enthusiasts Bill and Julie May in 2018, adding to the rich assembly of fossils from the limestone cave. The skin sample opens a window into the past, offering insights into the evolutionary history of terrestrial vertebrates. Ice-rich deposits in Medusa fossae. In a surprising discovery made in early 2024, recent research using ESA's Mars Express spacecraft has unraveled the mystery surrounding Mars' massive Medusae fossae formation, or the MFF. The MFF, a colossal deposit of soft rock near the red planet's equator, was previously studied over 15 years ago. The study revealed enigmatic deposits up to 8,200 feet deep. However, the composition remained unclear until now. The MFF covers about 1/5 of the continental United States. It surpasses the largest explosive volcanic deposit on Earth in mass by 100 times. It features wind-sculpted formations hundreds of kilometers across and several kilometers high. Positioned at the boundary between Martian highlands and lowlands, these features are believed to be a major source of dust on Mars. Newer data from Mars Express Marsis radar indicates that the MFF deposits are even thicker than initially thought, reaching up to 12,000 feet. Dr. Thomas Waters, a planetary researcher at the Smithsonian Institution, highlights that radar signals match expectations for layered ice, resembling signals from Mars' polar caps, which are known for their ice richness. If melted, the ice within the MFF could cover Mars in a layer of water 5 to 9 feet deep. This could be the most water ever found in this region of Mars. The data challenges previous assumptions, suggesting that layers of dust and ice were topped by a protective layer of dry dust or ash. This unexpected composition raises questions about the MFF's history and Mars' climate in the past. Dr. Andrea Cicchetti from the National Institute for Astrophysics in Italy stressed that the observed properties cannot be explained by a giant pile of dust alone. The results, which will eventually be published in the journal Geophysical Research Letters, could significantly alter our understanding of Mars' climate history, presenting a fascinating target for future human or robotic exploration. Caterpillar venom. Did you know that some caterpillars are venomous? Asp caterpillars may seem like innocent crawlers on oak and elm trees in North America, but their encounters with humans reveal a secret weapon. An excruciatingly painful venom delivered through concealed prickly spines. Victims have described the sensation as so intense that it felt like a broken ankle. In 2023, curious scientists at the University of Queensland in Australia decided to unravel the mystery behind this tiny creature's potent blow. Their investigation unveiled a unique protein in the caterpillar's venom that can transform into a ring shape, puncturing holes in cells and triggering powerful pain signals to the brain. This discovery not only explains the agonizing sting, but also opens doors for potential medical applications. In the future, the same hole-punching mechanisms might be harnessed to deliver drugs into cells effectively. Study co-author Andrew Walker envisions the possibility of engineering these toxins to target cancer cells or pathogens while sparing healthy human cells. This revelation sheds light on a rare process called horizontal gene transfer. The researchers propose that around 400 million years ago, a specific type of bacteria infiltrated the caterpillar, introducing a unique cell-infiltrating gene. This genetic adaptation persisted through generations, even getting passed down to moths. But the implications of this discovery go beyond the insect world, potentially guiding medical research towards innovative drug delivery methods. As Walker notes, the findings challenge preconceptions, highlighting that evolution and life are weirder and more complex than we usually assume. So, next time you encounter an asp caterpillar, remember, beneath its innocent appearance lies a fascinating story of evolution and adaptation. It's a tiny creature with a surprisingly painful punch. Have you ever been stung by a caterpillar? Let me know in the comments. Seismic ripples. Using a powerful telescope called ALMA, scientists observed an ancient spiral galaxy named BRI 1335-0417. Pretty original, right? It's over 12 billion years old. For the sake of this video, though, I'll just call this spiral galaxy BRI. Scientists were shocked to discover a unique movement in the galaxy's disk, similar to ripples on a pond. This motion is caused by an external force, like new gas entering the galaxy or interacting with smaller galaxies, providing fuel for star formation. The study, led by Dr. Takafumi Tsukui from the Australian National University, used ALMA to examine how gas moves within the ancient galaxy. Gas is crucial for forming stars, and understanding its movement gives insight into how a galaxy fuels star formation. The observed galaxy, BRI, not only showed the gas's motion, but also revealed a seismic wave, a first for this type of early galaxy. The vertically oscillating motion of the galaxy's disk is attributed to an external source, possibly new gas entering the galaxy or interactions with smaller galaxies. Both scenarios would supply the galaxy with new fuel to form new stars. The study also uncovered a bar-like structure in the galaxy's disk, the most distant one known. Galactic bars play a vital role in driving galaxy evolution by disrupting gas and transporting it towards the center. In the case of BRI, this discovery shows the dynamic growth of a young galaxy. Early galaxies, like this one, formed stars at a much faster rate than modern galaxies. But despite having a mass similar to our Milky Way, Brie formed stars hundreds of times faster. Dr. Emily Wisniewski, a co-author of the study, highlights the importance of understanding how gas is supplied to sustain this rapid star formation. The rare spiral structure of Brie in the early universe provides crucial information on likely scenarios. While physical direct observation of the galaxy's evolution is impossible, computer simulations can help piece together the story based on the snapshot provided by ALMA. Secrets in 9,700-year-old chewing gum. About 9,700 years ago, people on the west coast of Scandinavia were camping and eating a diet that included deer, trout, and hazelnuts. A recent study conducted by Stockholm University analyzed DNA in a piece of chewing gum from that time, which told us a lot of interesting information. We could see what these people ate and if they were healthy. The gum was likely chewed by teenagers, both boys and girls, who were engaged in fishing, hunting, and collecting resources for food. The chewed gum revealed that one of the teenagers had severe problems with their teeth, specifically suffering from periodontitis, a gum infection that can lead to tooth and bone loss. This condition affected their ability to eat chewy deer meat and prepare resin by chewing it. The gum contained DNA from bacteria related to periodontitis, as well as DNA from plants and animals that the individuals had consumed. The gum was discovered at the Huseby Cleve site on the island of Orust, where it was excavated along with stone tools, indicating it was from the Mesolithic era. Did you know that we could learn so much from chewing gum? The study offers a snapshot of the life of hunter-gatherers on the Scandinavian west coast. This discovery is very important because we can tell what teenagers were eating almost 10,000 years ago. We can even see the challenges they faced, like severe dental issues. Extinct eagle lizard. Scientists have identified a new reptile species, and they've named it Garzapelta muelleri. It lived around 218 million years ago in what is now a Texas canyon. Atosaurs, like Garzapelta, were heavily armored creatures resembling a mix of a crocodile's body, a pig's snout, and a bird's skull. The newly discovered species, measuring up to 11.5 feet long, is a type of atosaur that's named after its eagle-like skull. Atosaurs, known as eagle lizards, roamed wet regions on the supercontinent Pangaea during the late Triassic period. These reptiles were believed to be both omnivores and herbivores. They disappeared at the end of the Triassic due to the mass extinction event. The fossilized skeleton of this new reptile was initially discovered in 1989 by paleontologist Bill Mueller and amateur collector Emmett Shedd in Garza County, Texas. The specimen, found in the Cooper Canyon Formation, includes the creature's carapace, a hard outer shell resembling a turtle's. The fossil provides new understanding of the variations within this species and suggests the emergence of a new group of atosaurs. This study, led by paleontologist William Reyes from the University of Texas at Austin, was published in the Anatomical Record. The findings highlight unique features in the armor of Garzapelta muelleri, differentiating it from other known atosaur species. The discovery allows us a peek into the evolutionary tree of atosaurs and their existence on a global scale, with fossils found in Europe and the Americas. This new species joins recent discoveries in paleontology. Scientists have identified a new dinosaur species, a massive prehistoric fish skull, and the remains of a large flying reptile. Neanderthal markings in a French cave. Nearly 60,000 years ago, Neanderthals were leaving engravings on cave walls in France. According to a paper published in the PLOS ONE journal in 2023, scientists analyzed hundreds of dots, wavy lines, and faint striations called finger flutings that were left on the longest and flattest wall of an ancient cave in the Loire Valley. Located in La Roche-Cotard, the cave's entrance was first found in 1846 during quarrying work nearby. Then, 60 years later, in 1912, Stone tools made by Neanderthals, along with animal bones, were discovered during an excavation. Given the sheer amount of artifacts from this cave, extensive digging continued throughout the 1970s, and again from 2008 to now. Within the cavern, researchers have located 4 main interconnecting chambers, each of which plunges over 108 feet into the riverbank. Based on the area where the bones and stone tools were found, scientists believe that the first chamber of the cave was inhabited by Neanderthals. They may have had small settlements set up in front of the entrance as well. Sediments that blocked the mouth of the cave were analyzed, and the results indicated that the cavern had been sealed externally roughly 57,000 years ago. And that number is extremely important, given the fact that modern humans didn't arrive in the region for another 15,000 years. This information, along with the tools that were unearthed at the site, suggests that it was Neanderthals who created these finger flutings, not Homo sapiens, which was previously believed. The markings were likely created by Neanderthals pressing and sweeping their fingers along a thin brown film on the cave walls made of limestone. The height at which the markings were found means that only adults or tall teenagers could have created them, as children would have been too small to reach. The patterns of this wall art are grouped into 8 distinct panels. However, it's unclear what they mean. The design could have been a layout of a proposed village or settlement, or perhaps it was a visual representation of animal migration patterns. The possibilities are quite literally endless. While we can't know for certain if these markings are representative of symbolic thinking, recent findings show that Neanderthals were capable of more than previously thought. Evidence suggests that they made jewelry, built complex structures, and even buried their dead. Gateway to Hell. In 2023, scientists made an astonishing discovery at the Mitla site in Mexico, an entrance to the underworld, believed to be a gateway to hell by the Zapotec culture. The structure, initially dating back over 2,200 years, consists of underground passages expanded by the Zapotecs and later covered by a Catholic church, which was built after the Spanish conquest in 1521. So, a gateway to hell was found buried beneath the church. Using geophysical scanning techniques, they uncovered a complex network of tunnels, with the most significant discovery being an area situated 16 to 26 feet below ground level, potentially revealing a sizable chamber. The exploration aligns with Zapotec tradition, suggesting that the entrance to the underground passages may be beneath the church's main altar. The ARX project stated that this finding is only in the initial phase of exploration. The discovery resonates with a historical account by Dominican Father Francisco de Burgoa in 1674, describing a subterranean temple at Mitla with interconnected chambers, housing tombs of high priests and kings of Teozapotlan. The account mentions a stone door leading to a deep cavern extending 30 leagues underground, resembling streets with pillars supporting its roof. But apparently, missionaries sealed all entrances to this labyrinth, leaving only the palaces above ground. The Mitla cave system is a mystery. Is it still there, and what was it used for? Let me know your theories in the comments. The Less Megalodon. A recent study has challenged previous assumptions about the megalodon, the massive shark that went extinct 3.6 million years ago. Contrary to earlier beliefs that it was a round and stocky predator, similar to the modern great white shark, the study suggests that the megalodon was more slender and possibly longer, resembling the modern mako shark. This discovery has significant implications for understanding megalodon behavior, ancient ocean life, and the reasons for its extinction. The study involved a re-examination of the fossil record, with researchers comparing megalodon vertebrae fossils to those of living shark relatives, like the great white shark. The results indicate that the Megalodon wasn't merely a larger version of the great white shark, but had a different body type altogether. The revised understanding of Megalodon's body shape suggests that it had a longer digestive canal, potentially leading to enhanced nutrient absorption. This in turn implies that Megalodons might not have needed to eat as frequently as previously thought. The researchers propose that this could have reduced predation pressure on other marine creatures, contributing to more stable whale populations over time. This means the Megalodon didn't eat absolutely everything almost to extinction. The study also challenges theories about Megalodon extinction. While some scientists had suggested a decrease in prey as a factor, there is another theory. It's been suggested that the emergence of the great white shark, which was more agile and a better predator, could have led to competition for food. So this must have played a role in the Megalodon's demise. The international team of scientists from the US, UK, Austria, France, Japan, Mexico, Brazil, and Australia emphasize that this revised understanding of Megalodon's body type opens avenues for further investigation into its lifestyle and the factors contributing to its extinction. Overall, the study represents a significant step toward unraveling the mysteries of this ancient marine predator and its impact on marine ecosystems. Zaku revealed. Around 3,800 years ago, the ancient city of Zaku thrived as a vital trading post in Mesopotamia and present-day Iraq. Established around 1800 BC, the city facilitated trade routes for caravans carrying goods such as wooden beams, metals, and minerals. Founded by the old Babylonian Empire, Zaku became a significant commercial hub for about 600 years before an earthquake struck, leading to its abandonment. In the 1980s, Zaku was flooded and submerged as part of the Mosul Dam project. However, with recent climate changes causing water levels to fall, Zaku resurfaced earlier this year in the Kurdish region of Iraq. Archaeologists, including a team of local and German researchers, conducted excavations, uncovering new details about the city. Zaku's emergence has provided valuable insights into the Mitanni Empire, particularly during its second ruling period. The Mitanni Empire, which is native to northeast Syria, took over Zaku around 1500 BC after the Hittites conquered Mesopotamia. The city thrived as a vassal state for the larger empire, fostering good relations between the local king and the emperor. Excavations revealed infrastructure built during the Mitanni reign, including a palace, fortifications, and a massive public storehouse made from mud bricks. The storehouse, a key feature of Zaku, featured large rooms housing wheat, barley, imported metal, and wood. The city's residents, predominantly Hurrian people, engaged in agriculture with bread as a staple food. But between 1400 and 1300 BC, the Mitanni city met a devastating end due to an earthquake. It's hard to recover from that. The Assyrians later settled in Zaku around 1300 BC, building houses amid the ruins. However, the city was deserted once again sometime between 1270 and 1250 BC, as the Assyrians moved to establish their new provincial capital, Mardaman, in the plains of Mesopotamia. Zaku's trade hub significance faded, contributing to its eventual abandonment again.
Thanks for watching! Be sure to stay tuned for extra content you might have missed.
The German Bog Bodies. Archaeologists have found dozens of bog bodies throughout Europe, but one of the highest concentration comes from Germany, specifically from Bavaria. In 1957, the creepy remains of a woman from the Iron Age were discovered near the small town of Pieting, along with 12 other bog bodies. At first glance, it almost looks like a fat guy with boots. This woman was interesting for one particular reason. She was discovered buried in a preserved wooden coffin. Because of the bog, her remains and the coffin itself remained in almost perfect condition for over 1,000 years. Bog bodies aren't typically found in coffins, but simply discarded in what was once an ancient swamp. We don't know who this woman was or why she was buried here, but she remains quite unique in the world of European mummies. She's not the only amazing bog body ever found either. A severed head was discovered wrapped in deerskin at a bog in Schleswig, Germany. 2 more bodies were discovered here as well in 1952, while a worker was extracting peat to sell for fuel. Both of them died around the 1st century AD, either from malnutrition or illness. They were blindfolded and then dumped in the swamp. Then there's the Dammendorf man, the victim of a sacrifice sometime around 300 BC, who was also found mummified in the bog. He was found almost entirely intact, including his skin and nails, as well as his leather shoes. Toddlers in the Trees. The analysis of an extremely rare fossil, that of a person from 3.3 million years ago, has revealed something extraordinary. For the first time ever, scientists have discovered how toddlers born to our earliest ancestors avoided predators. You may have wondered about it yourself before, how human babies ever made it this far through evolution. They don't have claws, they're basically useless for the first 10 years of life, and there is no way a human baby is going to fight off something like a bear or even a particularly angry badger. But here's the thing. We evolved from primates and came down from the trees and slowly began to walk instead of swinging from branch to branch. Scientists have been struggling to find out how much time our ancestors spent in the trees and how long it took us to walk upright. The analysis of the female toddler skeleton from nearly 3.5 million years ago has now confirmed that the child did indeed walk on 2 legs, though not very well. Dr. Jeremy De Silva says the foot bones of the fossils show that the female spent a lot of time off the ground. Jeremy believes that when it came to hiding from predators, toddlers were extremely good at scrambling away, climbing up a tree, and then hiding in the branches like a monkey. Furthermore, the evidence shows that adults developed the ability to walk, but infants spent more time in trees. This is how human toddlers were able to survive, coming down from the branches only when they grew to be adults and could really defend themselves on the ground. The Perfect Shipwreck. Off the coast of East Kent in England, there is a sandbank called the Goodwin Sands that goes on for about 10 miles. The area is made up of sand over 82 feet deep. It's a picturesque thing to look at from the shore, but quite deadly to encounter from the sea. Maritime archaeologist Dan Pascoe says there are about 2,000 shipwrecks scattered across the Goodwins that experts know about, with another potential 1,500 that they don't know about. Throughout the ages, roughly 50,000 sailors have lost their lives here. During the Great Storm of 1703, 1,200 sailors were lost in just one night, with 130 ships being destroyed as they were blown hundreds of miles off course. One of these ships was the Stirling Castle, commissioned in 1674. During the Great Storm, she was blown over by the wind, broken by the waves, and sank to the bottom of the sea. She was discovered in 1979 by recreational divers in perfect condition. She was found in such amazing shape that you could literally walk down its steps, if it wasn't underwater. But sadly, bringing an ancient ship out from the darkness of the ocean was pretty much impossible back in the 1970s. When underwater archaeologists went down to take a look at the Stirling Castle, they found her no longer in perfect condition, but in pieces. The ship is now about 45 feet deep and broken apart on the sands, but just 4 decades ago, she looked as though she was trapped in a glass bottle, stuck in time and perfectly preserved. Tombs of Mystery. Archaeologists in Cyprus, part of the Soderbergh expedition, made a shocking discovery in 2018 at the Bronze Age city of Hala Sultan Tekke. They found a pair of ancient tombs filled with underground chambers and bursting with human skeletons. Some of these bones were over 3,000 years old and have been sitting in the salty soil, slowly decaying. Archaeologists also found gold jewelry, ceramics, and gemstones dating back throughout the ages, all the way to the era of the Egyptian queen Nefertiti. At least 155 skeletons were found between the 2 tombs, and about 500 artifacts. But what's amazing is that all this stuff was found in layers, suggesting the tombs were used over the centuries. The oldest layer appears to be from the 18th dynasty of Egypt, with more recent layers being from classical Greece, around the year 1300 BC. Nobody is exactly sure what was going on at this ancient site, as the discoveries are simply all over the board. A seal from the Babylonian Empire was found here from 1800 BC, meaning it must have traveled almost 1,000 miles to be buried in Cyprus. The city of Hala Sultan Tekke could have been an ancient trading center. It would explain all of the strange artifacts from the different corners of the known globe, even scarabs from Egypt. Archaeologists also say it could have been a cemetery preserved for city royalty, used consistently for roughly 1,000 years. The skeleton at Herculanum. An extremely unique skeleton has been discovered at the site of the Vesuvius eruption in the ancient Roman city of Herculanum. Archaeologists found the remains of a partially mutilated man who had his skin literally scorched off in the year 79 when Mount Vesuvius erupted. That would be the same eruption that destroyed the city of Pompeii and left its residents solidified in bricks of hard ash, looking as if they'd all gazed straight into the face of Medusa. This individual was between the age of 40 and 45 when he was killed, just steps away from the sea as he had likely been trying to run away from the eruption. Nobody knows exactly what this guy was doing, but it almost looked like he was trying to seek shelter in the water itself. And if you think about it, it does kind of make sense. If a great big volcano is spewing fire out of its mouth, trying to hide in the water or maybe even trying to swim out into the sea would seem like a logical option. But while this may sound kind of exciting, it definitely wasn't. According to Francesco Cirano, the director of the Herculanum Archaeological Park, this man's last moments were absolutely terrible. He was discovered surrounded by carbonized wood, suggesting a roof beam may have crushed his skull in his final moments of life. Plus, a pyroclastic surge swept over him, with temperatures of between 400 and 700 degrees Fahrenheit. It was so hot, sweeping towards the sea at over 60 miles per hour, that it turned his bones bright red. His skin melted instantly, and his blood baked against his bones. Dying in a volcanic eruption is a pretty harsh way to go. And on that note, it's time for a shout out. Want to say a big thank you to Alan Godden and Trent Sims. Thanks so much for joining us and watching Origins Explained. If you are new here, welcome, and be sure to subscribe for more videos about amazing discoveries. Nonbinary Warrior. The ancient remains of a person who died over 1,000 years ago in Finland have been turning the world of anthropology upside down. Experts believe this individual may have been an Iron Age leader and non-binary. The individual was discovered at a grave in southern Finland back in 1968 during construction. Archaeologists found brooches, fragments of clothing, and other artifacts that suggested the dead person was a female. But oddly enough, the grave also had a sword positioned over the person's left side, something typically reserved for men. The experts had two contradicting pieces of evidence and couldn't tell if they were dealing with a man or a woman. The only thing that was clear was that the person had been a highly respected member of the community. The lead author of the study, Ulla Moilanen, said they were laid over a soft feather blanket and then drowned in valuables. This kind of thing was only done for the top members of society. A recent DNA analysis using the newest technology has unveiled that this person had Klinefelter syndrome, which means they were born a male with an extra X chromosome. Instead of having an X and a Y chromosome, they had XXY chromosomes. Experts are now saying this could have caused the person to identify as outside the traditional gender roles for ancient Finland. Whatever the case, it didn't seem to have any adverse effect on their status in the community. They were still a respected person buried in the fashion of a chieftain or a great warrior. Ancient cave art. In 1940, a group of teenagers stumbled upon one of the most impressive examples of ancient cave art anywhere on Earth. The boys were walking through the woods near the French town of Montignac when their dog suddenly vanished. A quick search for the animal revealed that it had fallen into a hole. So the boys scaled 45 feet down into the darkness to look for their dog. All they had to illuminate their way were paraffin lamps. Amazingly, the hole led to a cave, and the boys could see by lamplight that the walls and ceiling were painted in brightly colored images of unknown animals. These animals included bison, aurochs, and prehistoric lions. One of the boys was quoted as saying it looked like the animals were dancing in the flickering of their lamps. We know this place today as the Lascaux Caves, what archaeologists call a decorated cave. These types of caves have been found everywhere except Antarctica, with at least 350 of them in Europe. Even though massive distance separates all the caves, they all seem to show very similar artwork: handprints, extinct animals, and abstract designs. We don't know why ancient people all across the globe were obsessed with painting things on cave walls, but they all seem to do it. The Lascaux Caves, now closed to the public so they don't ruin the paintings, just happens to be one of the most dramatic and most exciting. The paintings here were made around 15,000 BC, back when Ice Age animals still roamed the planet. What would you do if you discovered something like this? Let me know in the comments below. The Hasanlu Lovers. Archaeologists discovered the remains of a couple inside a burned village from 2,800 years ago. The discovery was made by researchers with the University of Pennsylvania, excavating an ancient city called Tepe Hasanlu in the northwest of Iran. Normally, a couple of skeletons wouldn't be a big deal, but this pair was found preserved in a mud brick bin meant for storing grain. The skeletons were not only buried together, but appeared to have been kissing at the exact moment of their death, locked in the most heartwarming embrace ever found. They have been dubbed the Hasanlu Lovers. Archaeologists say the city of Tepe Hasanlu was destroyed by an invading army in the year 800 BC. Whoever invaded this place killed everyone, stole everything, and burned the city to the ground. Hundreds of other skeletons have been found preserved beneath the streets and dug out of the foundations of ancient houses. Most appear to have been killed where they stood or massacred inside their own homes. Archaeologists believe the Hasanlu Lovers were hiding from the invaders inside the grain bin when they died, though not at the hands of the attackers. Instead, they may have died from smoke inhalation. Because the entire city was aflame, it would have been easy for them to perish from asphyxiation, trapped inside the grain bin as they literally ran out of breath. Ancient fishing. 12,000 years ago, ancient humans were using fishing tools just as sophisticated as the tools fishermen use today. A team of researchers led by archaeologist Antonella Pedergnana studied a small collection of early fishing technologies discovered in the Hula Valley of northern Israel. Researchers found grooved stones that they think were used as weights, as well as hooks similar in size and shape to what we use nowadays. Some of the fishing hooks even have barbs to stop the fish from escaping. Researchers say these refined methods of fishing came about due to a dramatic shift in the history of humanity. 12,000 years ago was right around the time when humans ceased being nomadic and settled down. People began to practice agriculture and live in villages, and fishing was a huge part of this. A person could easily fish at the lakeshore by their village without having to roam for miles trying to hunt deer. This sudden change resulted in a massive increase of fish in the human diet, as well as innovations so profound that we still use them today. Researchers say each fishing hook that they found was different in size and style, suggesting the ancient people who lived here had significant knowledge of fish behavior. They were skilled fishermen who fashioned fishing rods, used bait, and probably caught more fish than your average angler in the 21st century. An ancient baby rattle. Archaeologists excavating near a small Polish village came across hundreds of pit tombs, with one of them containing a baby's toy rattle from 2,500 years ago. This tomb also happened to contain the remains of a cremated baby. Let me give you a bit of background on Bronze Age burials. Pit tombs were extremely common. It was basically putting cremated remains in an urn, just like you would today, and then burying a bunch of them together in one big hole. Some of these holes have been found with over 40 urns inside of them. It was also traditional to give offerings to the gods when people were buried during this time in Europe. Many of these pits have been found with clay gifts, household items, and decorated bowls. The pit discovered with the cremated remains of the infant also had the infant's toy rattle, which was quite advanced for being so old. Someone took the time to carve the rattle out of clay and fill it with tiny balls so that it made noise when the child shook it. In total, archaeologists here found the remains of at least 150 settlers from the Lusatian culture. These settlers came from a mysterious civilization that spread from Poland into the surrounding parts of Europe, primarily cattle and pig farmers. We know they cremated their dead and that it was probably related to their worship of the sun, but not much more is known about the Lusatian other than that.
Ancient meteorite. Sometime a long time ago, a green rock streaked across the sky like a falling missile of light as it burned through our atmosphere. It was a space rock and crashed in the middle of the Sahara Desert in Algeria. The rock was buried under desert sands and discovered by scientists in May of 2020. Scientists love a good space rock, and they took this one back to their lab to do some experiments and tests. The rock looked pretty ordinary, a lump of coarse stone with green and yellow flecks on it. It had some brown stains on its bottom. Most ordinary people wouldn't be able to tell the difference between this meteorite and a normal Earth rock. But it wasn't until scientists looked inside the rock at its composition that they realized they had a true treasure on their hands. The meteorite, officially called Erg-Chech-002, was found to contain massive amounts of andesite. This is a unique kind of volcanic rock only found on Earth when tectonic plates smashed into each other. Normally, meteorites that land on the planet are made from basalt, like dried pieces of lava. However, this meteorite was made during a tectonic event that occurred 4.565 billion years ago. This came as a huge shock, considering the Earth is only 4.543 billion years old. In simple terms, the meteorite plucked out of the desert was created before our planet even existed. Scientists don't know where it came from, but believe it could have been a piece of a protoplanet. It may have broken off from a miniature planet during the earliest development of our solar system, before any of our current planets were around. Newspaper rock. Arizona is by far one of the best states in the country for finding wonderful things out in the desert. Petrified Forest National Park is home to a discovery just as interesting as it is mysterious. It's called Newspaper Rock, and it's the site of a group of ancient petroglyphs left behind by Native Americans over 2,000 years ago. Petrified Forest National Park is popular because it's filled with pieces of petrified wood that have been around for at least 200 million years. However, Newspaper Rock is just as fascinating, with over 650 individual petroglyphs covering a comparatively small area. Researchers believe that the high concentration of petroglyphs in such a small area indicates it must have been somewhere of great importance to the Puebloan people, but they don't know why. To make things even more mysterious, the petroglyphs here were not left behind all at once. The oldest are 2,000 years old, but the most recent are only 650 years old. That means they were left behind by multiple generations, all of whom traveled to Newspaper Rock for unknown reasons. There are petroglyphs of strange beings that almost look like aliens, weird zoomorphic figures, geometric shapes, handprints, and spiritual figures. As interesting as these petroglyphs are, nobody knows what any of them are supposed to mean to this day. The Prehistoric Crocodiles of Africa. 100 million years ago, the Sahara Desert was a swampy paradise filled with dinosaurs and prehistoric beasts. Interestingly, one of the most frightening creatures of the Sahara was the crocodile. There used to be many different types of ancient crocodiles living in this predatory landscape, where massive reptiles and scary monsters fought for control of the food chain. Some of them galloped, some of them were like aquatic tanks, and others were outright weird. It was in the 1990s when paleontologist Paul Sereno discovered the fossilized skeleton of what was likely the biggest super crocodile that ever lived. It's called the Sarcosuchus imperator, also known as the super croc, and its fossils were taken out of the Sahara. The huge crocodile was a lot like the ones we see today, only way bigger, and they could grow upwards of 40 feet long. After his initial discovery, Paul returned to the Sahara over the years to try and find new crazy species of crocodiles. He uncovered the dog croc, a beast that was a crocodile but looked a lot like a dog with long legs and a powerful nose. There was also the duck croc, which was a weird mix between a crocodile and a duck-billed platypus. Then, the smallest of them all was a tiny crocodile that lived here, a thing called a rat croc that only grew to be 2 feet long and had teeth for digging insects out of the dirt like a rat. There were so many crocodiles over the years in the Sahara that we still haven't identified them all. Iram of the Pillars. Iram of the Pillars has a very similar story to that of Sodom and Gomorrah from the Bible. In the tale of Sodom and Gomorrah, the city was obliterated because it had become a cesspool of sin, and God was furious. He wiped the city of heathens off the map as punishment for being too liberal with their bodies and not worshipping their creator hard enough. In the tale of Iram of the Pillars, we see the same thing. The citizens became too sinful. They refused the holy teachings of Allah, and they were belligerent when a prophet was sent to stop them from their unrighteous ways. They had every chance to get back on track, but they refused. In the end, Allah destroyed them. The city was swallowed by the desert sands as if a sinkhole had opened up to eat them. The true location of this cursed city has never been revealed. As far as most people are concerned, Iram of the Pillars is nothing but a myth. However, there are some who believe Iram of the Pillars is in fact the lost city of Ubar, which was discovered in the desert of Arabia in Oman. The city of Ubar fits the description of Iram of the Pillars perfectly. Modern archaeologists did excavations and found that the city had, just like the legend, been swallowed by sand. It was built on a limestone deposit, and over time, a sinkhole developed underneath it. This city fell into the sand and was lost for over 1,000 years, only to be found in 1992. Violence in the Atacama Desert. Researchers examining ancient mummies in Chile's Atacama Desert have made a horrifying discovery. The team of researchers looked at the remains of 194 mummified human beings that lived between 1000 BC and 600 AD in this desert. What they found during their study was that the people who lived here, some of the earliest farmers in South America, were exceptionally violent. Not just violent, but cruel and barbaric. In one instance, the scientists found the remains of a woman who had the skin of her mouth stretched all the way up to her nose. This must have been an intentional act of savagery, something only a truly evil person could do. It would have caused an unimaginable amount of pain, and was just as bad as some of the worst torture techniques the medieval Europeans ever came up with. This unfortunate victim was only one of many, and almost all the mummified remains showed evidence of brutality and violence, both with the men and women. The researchers wrote in their study, published in the Journal of Anthropological Archaeology, that farming was to blame for the rise in desert violence. Before farming became a thing in the Chilean desert, people were peaceful and quiet. Humans spent about 9,000 years at the edge of the desert, gathering, hunting, and living in peace. It wasn't until farming started 3,000 years ago that violence suddenly came upon them like a plague. Scientists believe that farming and settling in individual groups created conflict through social inequality, territorial claims, and unprecedented population spikes. Sloth Puddles. New Mexico was a very different place 11,000 years ago. In what is today White Sands National Park, children once played in giant puddles. However, these weren't any ordinary puddles. They were made by the footprints of a giant ground sloth. Scientists have recently put together a snapshot of the past. 11,000 years ago, a family was trekking across New Mexico when they came upon tracks in the mud. The tracks had been left behind by a monstrous ground sloth, a beast that is currently extinct. These tracks were huge, and they were also filled with water and mud. The prehistoric kids then had their own pool party in the footprints, splashing around and stomping in the muck. We know all of this because the footprints from the sloth and the kids have been preserved on the floor of the desert. The man who studied the trackway in New Mexico was Matthew Bennett from Bournemouth University in the UK. He made the journey from the UK to America over a dozen times during a span of 5 years to locate and analyze the footprints of prehistoric humans. Matthew says he found 30 footprints crisscrossing the sloth trackway, all of them from children between the ages of 5 and 8. Interestingly, children's footprints aren't entirely unusual in the New Mexico desert. Just like modern children, prehistoric kids would have been racing around outside, burning their energy, and leaving hundreds of footprints a day. It's the combination of sloth tracks and children's prints that are so intriguing in this case, showing that not much has changed in human behavior in thousands of years. Mysterious Reef. A mysterious reef from millions of years ago has just been found in the dry Australian desert. The Null Arbor Plain in southern Australia was once a prehistoric ocean, but it's a featureless expanse of limestone bedrock today. An international team of scientists, led by Matej Lipar from the Slovenian Academy of Sciences and Art, used satellite imagery to make their discovery. They uncovered an ancient landform in the middle of nowhere that had likely once been a coral reef, or at least it may have been part of one. Scientists identified the dome of the reef, its circular trough, and a massive rim that would have been rich in coral and algae. The reef was about 4,000 feet wide and was originally at the bottom of the ocean.
The reason that leftover coral isn't typically found in deserts, even if they were underwater, is that geography changes over time. In this case, the water here dried up about 14 million years ago. Over an extended period of time, mountains can rise up, pieces of land can break apart, or humans may change the landscape. However, in the Null Arbor Plain, nothing has changed in 14 million years. There have been no major transitions or upheavals, leaving the land as a perfect geological record dating back to the Miocene period. Mongolian giant camels. A new study by an international team of researchers has shown that the Mongolian giant camel went extinct 27,000 years ago. This is fascinating information because until recently, scientists weren't sure if human beings had ever interacted with the giant camel. The difference between a modern camel and an extinct giant camel is mostly the size. The Mongolian camels were nearly 10 feet tall and weighed over 2,200 pounds. They lived at the same time as the wild Bactrian camel, which is still alive today. The problem was that the giant camel was too big for its own good. In the end, their size betrayed them as they had a harder time finding food and wound up going extinct. In 2021, researchers looked at giant camel leg and foot bones found in the Gobi Desert of Mongolia. They found the bones were at least 27,000 years old. This means that human beings, early people who lived in caves and drew pictures on the walls by firelight, interacted with these huge beasts. An ancient overseer. In the Negev Desert of Israel, archaeologists have uncovered the ancient luxury home of a wealthy landowner. The estate is 1,200 years old and was built by someone with a lot of cash, or at least a lot of power. The Israel Antiquities Authority say the property was likely the residence of a landowner, someone who looked over the farmsteads in the area. This would have been like a prehistoric slumlord, someone who had more money than all of their neighbors, who leased land to the peasants, and who profited off the hard work of the nearby farmers. The discovery was made not far from the Bedouin city of Rahat, and it goes to show just how unequal society has always been. The mansion was built in the early years of the Islamic period, or around the 8th century AD. It was just as splendid as any fancy mansion today. It had 4 main wings, each one connected to the central courtyard. The place was decorated with colorful paintings, and it had its own cistern to provide the residents with cool water all year long. The archaeologists even uncovered vaulted structures underneath the main mansion, which would have given the owners protection from the boiling hot sun in the summer. Qusayr Amra. Qusayr Amra is a desert castle in eastern Jordan, built around 723 AD by Walid ibn Yazid, who would later become the leader of the Umayyad Caliphate. This was shortly after the death of Muhammad, when the caliphates began to rise across the Middle East and take control of everything. Today, there is very little of the original structure left. However, in the 8th century, it was a huge complex, a very real castle of beige stone rising from the flat and barren desert. It was likely built to be a royal retreat and didn't have any military function. It would have been a place for rest and relaxation, where the caliph could go to take a break and throw wild parties. One of the most impressive parts of the castle is that it still has murals painted on its ceilings. They haven't peeled off yet and show amazing scenes of hunting, dancing, and even hardcore nudity. There are also images of the constellations and the figures of the zodiac, showing a very different kind of artistic style in the early days of the Muslim world.
The Jewel of Seren. The Jewel of Seren, or the Joya de Seren in Spanish, is an archaeological site in El Salvador, which features the ruins of an ancient farming village from the Maya civilization. It's not nearly as popular as many of the other Maya sites in Central America, yet it's shockingly well preserved. Archaeologists even refer to it as the Pompeii of the Americas, because it's basically in the same state as it was 1,400 years ago. Also, just like Pompeii in Italy, the Jewel of Seren was blanketed by the ash of a nearby volcanic eruption. It happened in the year 600 AD, when the Loma Caldera blew its top and the settlement was buried under hot ashfall. After 400 years of human habitation, the place was lost in an instant. The buildings and people who didn't manage to escape were trapped under 30 feet of pyroclastic debris. It all happened in a matter of just hours. These days, the archaeological site is an amazing glimpse into the everyday life of the Maya. Everything is preserved just how it had been, giving archaeologists a unique look into daily life. They've discovered plenty of houses made of mud and straw, ceremonial centers, and household objects. From excavations that have gone on since 1976, archaeologists have determined this was a pretty standard settlement. People here mainly harvested agave fibers and fruit and made pottery. They then traded amongst themselves and as well with some other settlements in the nearby area. It was much more of a homesteading community than a bustling trade center. While the fate of this town is sad, it presents a unique archaeological opportunity to get an accurate view of what life was like back in the day. Tomb of the Egyptian Queen. In Egypt, archaeologists discovered a funerary temple dedicated to a queen from the Old Kingdom. The tomb contained over 50 wood sarcophagi, along with some ancient board games, strange wooden masks, and even a shocking copy of the Book of the Dead. Archaeologist and Egypt expert Zahi Hawass says the coffins date back to between 1570 and 1069 BC. They were pulled from 52 burial shafts that had been dug up to 40 feet deep in the earth. Each sarcophagus was found decorated with surreal paintings of ancient gods and scenes from Egyptian mythology. The coffins themselves were decorated with excerpts from the Book of the Dead. The Book of the Dead in this case wasn't actually a book, but a scroll 13 feet long. Written on the scroll are detailed instructions on how a deceased person should navigate the afterlife. It was essentially a welcome pamphlet for navigating the transition to the world beyond death. As for the queen, she was the wife of King Teti, the first ruler of the 6th dynasty. Her name was Queen Nart, and it was etched onto the wall of the temple as well as on a felled obelisk near the site of the burials. What's truly shocking is that up until now, researchers and the public had never even heard of this queen. In order for her to have the entire temple dedicated to her means that she was probably someone of extreme importance. But this was 3,000 years ago, and the experts have yet to figure out why she was such a big deal to the ancient Egyptians. Why do you think this ancient queen's story was lost to time? Tell me your theories in the comments below. Coin of an assassinated emperor. A rare gold coin was discovered in Hungary with a very peculiar depiction on it. On one side of the coin is the face of a murdered Roman emperor named Volusianus. He ruled the Roman Empire in the 3rd century for 2 years with his father. He was more of a co-emperor without total power. However, Emperor Volusianus was assassinated at the young age of 22, and by his own soldiers. Because his reign was so short-lived, it's rare for a coin to be found with his picture on it. It's also incredibly rare for a gold coin from Rome to be discovered in Hungary. The details of this discovery get weirder still. Excavators were left scratching their heads when they only found this single coin. Normally, there would be a small hoard scattered throughout the site, but that's not the case. There was only one coin found in the entire area, meaning somebody probably lost it. According to archaeologist Mate Varga, whoever had accidentally misplaced the coin would have been devastated, as it was worth a small fortune. As for where the coin was found, it was dug up at an ancient Roman settlement somewhere in Samaji County. To keep the site safe from potential looters and curious people with metal detectors, the exact location is being kept a secret for now. Ancient fashion. When archaeologists began excavating a burial chamber from the Ming Dynasty, they came across 2 coffins. One belonged to Lady Shu, mother of the Wang family, and the other was her husband. Inside the coffins, archaeologists found a surprising amount of clothing: an undershirt, patterned skirts, silk shoes, and heaps of other garments in amazing states of preservation. This was just in the lady's coffin. When they looked inside her husband's coffin, they found even more clothes. He had been buried with several different gowns and a luxury pillow sheet to rest his dead head upon. The clothing taken from both burials was of the utmost luxury. They were decorated intricately with gold thread, woven with patterns of flowers and insects. Even the shoes were embroidered with patterns of coins, chime stones, and square knots. It was all quite impressive stuff. In the end, the clothing dates back to 500 years ago. The Ming Dynasty lasted up until 1644 and was responsible for helping turn China into a global superpower. Thanks to these immaculately preserved coffins, archaeologists now know what fashion trends were like for the upper-class people of China during this period. An unusual treasure. In 2020, a metal detectorist in England found an unusual item that has been puzzling scholars ever since. The item is a small medieval cross made from pure gold, unearthed from the banks of the Tweed River. It's very small, only about 1 inch in length. It had a hole drilled in one end so it could be worn as a pendant. It's also been dated back to around the year 700 AD, when this part of England belonged to the Kingdom of Northumbria. It was an important center where Christians gathered and worshipped. For this reason, cross pendants are not that abnormal. But this one is. What makes it so unusual is that the cross is engraved with runic script. It's the very first medieval cross ever found that has runic writing on it. When linguistic experts were called in to inspect the mysterious artifact, they were able to decipher the message. It was a name, indicating the cross belonged to a man named Idruf. He had inscribed his own name on his pendant, probably so no one could steal it and claim it as their own. But things get even more unusual. The name has never been seen before in medieval England. Idruf was not a common name at all, as no other record of that name has been found. Whoever this man was, he must have been extremely wealthy to afford a pendant made of gold. Even though this was over 1,000 years ago, someone this wealthy should have been mentioned somewhere in local historical text. But there is no trace of him. This man was a mystery. Living in England with a name that didn't belong, scrawling runes on Christian artifacts, a historical anomaly. Where do you think the mysterious Idruf came from, and why was he so far from home? Let me know your theories in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Mysterious Buddhist Temple. Archaeologists believe they may have just discovered the oldest Buddhist temple ever built, or at least one of them. It was found in the Swat Valley of Pakistan, in the Gandhara region that was once taken over by Alexander the Great. It was actually when Alexander conquered the region that Buddhist beliefs from the east began to mingle with the Greek beliefs from the west. Alexander essentially built a bridge between two very different civilizations. Archaeologists believe the temple came from the 2nd century BC, when Gandhara was under the thumb of an Indo-Greek kingdom. Archaeologists also say they found the remains of an even older structure beneath the temple, which could have come from 100 years earlier. It's shocking because this means the temple beneath the newer temple was built just after the Buddha himself passed away, sometime around 483 BC. We don't know who built the temple or when its first foundations were laid, but it's still extremely old and shows how the Buddha's influence spread far and wide even in the recent years after his death. The temple was found on the ancient road that once led to the center of the city, where a great 65-foot wide stupa once stood. Sadly, the site is now the location of an electricity pylon, and the stupa is gone. Painted men. In Spain, a researcher stumbled upon mysterious paintings from 5,000 years ago while on the hunt for some lost cave tombs. The man, named Agustín Palomo, was looking through the rocky area of San Juan near Albuquerque, where he came across anthropomorphic figures painted on the cave walls. There were also some strange symbols, along with pictures of arrows and some depictions that looked like doodles. Agustín had originally set out in search of an ancient dolmen when he realized there were drawings all over the walls. What's really amazing is that nobody found these paintings until now. There are 2 other cave painting sites a few miles from here. The Maltravieso caves are nearby as well, where researchers in 1951 discovered traces of human habitation from 300,000 years ago. In the 1990s, handprint stencils were found on the walls of the caves, thousands of years old. In the end, the researcher never did find his tomb, but he did find some of the earliest works of art in the world. He doesn't know exactly what they are supposed to depict. They look more like monsters than any animals that would have been alive in prehistoric days. What do you think the drawings are meant to represent? Fictional creatures? Imaginative illustrations? Tell me your theories. Ancient Egyptian embalming cache. Archaeologists working with the Czech Institute for Egyptian Science recently discovered a treasure trove of artifacts from ancient Egypt. These artifacts all relate to the practice of mummification. They were found during excavations at the Abu Sir Cemetery and are some of the most remarkable embalming treasures ever uncovered. As you probably know already, mummification was a very important part of Egyptian society, but you may not know why they went through all the trouble of mummifying their dead, so I'll try to explain. Preserving the body of the dead was the only way the Egyptians believed the soul, known to them as Ka, could reach the afterlife. A person's Ka was thought to leave their body upon death. Then, the only way for their Ka to return was if they were properly embalmed. If they weren't, their Ka could not return to their body. That meant they could never live for eternity in the blessed afterlife. The archaeologists found 370 ceramic vessels, each one containing some material used for mummification. They also found empty canopic jars that were used for storing the most important organs like the brain and heart. It's one of the most complete sets of embalming tools found. This has given archaeologists a profound understanding of the step-by-step process each mummy went through after death. Ethiopian megaliths. The Judeo zone in Ethiopia is home to the largest concentration of stone megaliths in the entire continent. They dot the landscape of southern Ethiopia and have been there for at least 2,000 years. Ethiopian researcher Ashanafi Zina managed to correctly date the stone monuments on a journey to the region in 2013. He and Professor of Archaeology Andrew Duff discovered the stones to be from 50 BC, instead of the previously believed 1100 AD. In other words, these stone structures here are extremely old. But just what are they, and why are there so many of them? It's strange because they rear out of the ground seemingly without reason. Tall monuments carved in a variety of unusual shapes. Some almost look like people with human faces, while others are clearly shaped to resemble the male reproductive organ. And they are everywhere, about 10,000 of them spread across 60 sites. What really captivates archaeologists these days is that nobody knows who built them or why. It's one of the most understudied archaeological sites on the planet, not even considered a UNESCO World Heritage Site yet. Almost nobody knows anything about the people who lived in the region 2,000 years ago. Even these days, it's not exactly a tourist hotspot. It's in the absolute middle of nowhere, in a country most people are unfamiliar with. The stone monuments may have been markers for burials, but nobody can say for certain. The Unicorn Ring. In 2018, a signet ring that once belonged to an English noble was discovered on a piece of farmland in Buckinghamshire. The piece of treasure is 400 years old, crafted in the 17th century. For some unknown reason, it was discarded and then lost for centuries. It wasn't until a man with a metal detector walking through the field heard a bleep that he dug the thing out of the ground. This was no ordinary ring either. It was pure gold, weighing over 20 grams. It was also shaped to look like a unicorn. It's literally a gold unicorn ring, a historic, one-of-a-kind masterpiece. Unsurprisingly, it recently sold at auction for over $20,000 US. What would you have paid for this ring? Let me know in the comments. The ring also shows a coat of arms, which was able to be traced back to a man named Thomas Curwen, born in the year 1602. That was in the final months of the reign of Queen Elizabeth I. Historical records show Thomas inherited his family's estate in 1664, then died in 1672. The real mystery is how and why he was separated from his family ring, an heirloom that to any surviving member of the family would no doubt be priceless. Thanks for watching! Remember to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos about archaeological discoveries. See you next time! Bye!